Hello and welcome to Bread and Honey, the video series from Times Money Mentor about life, love and money, where nothing is off the table. Today we're asking, why don't we all escape to the country? It was the dream that the pandemic turned into a reality for many, including yours truly. We upped sticks and in our droves we moved out of the cities and into the country. Oftentimes it's much cheaper, surrounded by green or blue, more space in your home for an office or a garden, to have a hot tub perhaps, or maybe a couple of dogs running around. But is it all it's cracked up to be? I'm Georgie Frost, and today Martyn James and I will be exploring the good life with journalist and London escapee Katie Glass, who's written about her experience for The Times. Welcome to you both, Martyn. I was going to start with you, but it's really hot in this jacket. Yeah. So Katie, I just want to say I've made the effort. I've got Barber bag that can go. I've got the jacket and I've got the boots. Would I fit in the country?
It's everyone. That's what everyone's wearing.
I've got a shirt with a... Is it?
It's amazing.
Oh my God.
It's just like being in Somerset again.
Isn't it just? Martyn, you are a city boy. Could you handle life in the country?
I'm not sure if I could do all that, Barber, to be honest, but, I'd be willing to give it a crack. I'm from in between the throbbing metropolis, this is Manchester, and also the Peak District National Park.
Ooh,
So I have both. So I kind of grew up running down the road to the tom-tom drums of Manchester calling me in. But increasingly, as I've got older, I'm finding I'm strapping on the wellies and going walking in the Peak District. So I'm torn between both worlds. But I live in London.
So London might lose you yet, though, as you age. Katie, though, your move. Tell us about it. You were, like me, a pandemic mover.
Did the classic where you're sitting there in lockdown in my tiny flat in Dalston on Rightmove going, oh my God, if I sold this, I could buy a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
And then obviously you've got a lot of time on your hands, haven't you? And so, sitting there thinking I'd always wanted to move to the middle of nowhere. I'd grown up in very rural Wales and had sort of fantasy about it. And so, bam, just sort of decided I was selling my flat anyway. And so when the estate agent said, we've got an offer, I just thought, do you know what, I'm going to do it.
So, Katie, did you have a wobble at the last minute, or were you resolute, this is what I'm going to do? I'm speaking as a wobbler myself.
I probably was both sort of wobbling, but then I was sort of like roll. So it was happening. Everything's happening. What are you going to do? I'm wobbling. Just keep going with it. Otherwise, you're going to fall off. I was sort of on a roll in a bad way. But during lockdown...
We've all been there, Katie. It's fine.
When you turn it into the good way. So I'd lost my job. I broke up with my partner.
Oh, right, yeah.
I was deciding to leave him. And I thought, do you know what? We were selling my flat to buy a house together. And I just thought, yes, this is the moment. And I think because the life I had was going to change dramatically, I just thought I'd sort of seize the day and take control of it and just sort of went for it. But my plans changed as I went. I mean, I didn't really have any idea at all what I was up to. So I sort of saw about like 4,000 houses as I sort of worked out the plan of what my new life would be like.
Did you just like stick a pin in the map and go, yeah, there? Or was there any reason that you went wherever you went?
I think I sort of started driving and never stopped. So I ended up in Land's End because it was as far as I could get.
Literally, yeah.
Literally in Land's End. I was like, right, I'll live here now. Because I'm a writer, obviously, I can be very dramatic. So I was sort of stood on windswept cliffs thinking, yes, this is my new life. But then not for me. And you went...
After a couple of minutes, that gets a bit cold and you start regretting your choices in life. Yeah, no, I moved as well, but for the opposite reason.
Right.
Not saying my life was on a fantastic roll or anything, but it wasn't too bad. I actually moved for love, dare I say it. My other half was training and got an offer in Bradford. I know you're thinking, Bradford, that famous rural place. No, I said, I'm not going to go to Bradford, but I will go up north with you. So we decided on Skipton, the gateway to the Dales. And it was lovely. And I did stroll around in my Barber there and, I didn't get pitchforked out. So I think I fit in. It was an experience. A lot of people went at that time. London's population dropped by something like 75,000 during COVID net. That's the population of Tunbridge Wells, by the way.
Good fact. Good
yeah,
fact
absolutely.
Work, I feel.
Who knew that? And it was exactly the same in America. Something like 325,000 people moved out of the metropolitan areas into rural areas during the pandemic. So why did we go? Love, bad life role. I mean, life.
New life.
Should we just put that in life?
Don't you think it was also a sort of moment where, the numbers were in the news every day of people dying? This dramatic thing had happened. And I think a lot of us were feeling this sort of grasping for something new or something we hadn't tried before. Don't you think it was like...
You are a writer, aren't you? I think it's just everybody got really fed up with being in each other's faces in a very tiny flat in London with no garden and thought... I need to get out or I'm going to get divorced.
Well, absolutely. I think there was very much a sense, certainly amongst my friends as well, many of whom ran off into the nearest rural areas and, bought an old house, got the dogs and everything. And I felt a bit left behind. I mean, not in a kind of the rapture's coming left behind, but in a kind of, is anyone ever going to come back?
And didn't they just? They did come back.
I have a spare room. So it turns out that my country living friends can also enjoy the benefits of London while still living in the country. So I feel that they're benefiting and I'm not. But there you go.
This isn't just, let's be clear, this isn't just a pandemic episode. This is about the concept of moving to the country. And while life and life circumstances may mean that we up sticks and we go to the country, and maybe as we get older, we prefer that sort of lifestyle, there is another element of it is cheaper. By and large, it is likely to be cheaper. Certainly from my experience, I wasn't buying, I was renting. My rent went from North London, $1,600 a month to $750 a month in Skipton. I was like,
wow.
I'm rich. So let's look at house prices at the moment. Martyn, you're the Londoner. It's ridiculous.
Oh, yes. There's no chance of anyone without, wealthy parents or I think any kind of background of getting onto the housing ladder at all. And this actually creates this situation where we Londoners move further afield and start buying up in other cities. And then we price out all of the people in those cities who then move elsewhere. So we kind of move the problem further down the line.
Zoopla earlier this year said, London is the most affordable it's been since 2014. Wow! What price might that be, you're asking? It is still obviously the most expensive place in the country, and it's 13 times the average annual earnings of a UK worker. Now, bear in mind that if you want to get on the housing, you want to get a mortgage, lenders will likely give you, 4 to 4.5 times your annual earnings. That's how much they'll lend to you. The rest you have to save as a deposit. Okay, let's go for 2 people. Then you're looking at, 8 to 9. I worked out... I take this with a pinch of salt, but that's about 166,000 you'd have to have for a deposit.
Yes.
These are huge figures. And let's look at, we originally were going to call this Who Wants to Live in Shildon or something like that, weren't we, Martyn? Explain why Shildon.
And where Shildon is.
I love this. So Shildon
Great question.
Exactly. Shildon is in the northeast.
County Durham, by the way.
Yeah, County Durham. Very beautiful, very picturesque.
I can't say Shildon is, but County Durham is. I don't know Shildon, but I've Googled it, and from the pictures I've seen, it's a high street.
Looks really, really lovely. And the reason why we were focusing in on Shildon at first was because, according to those recent surveys, it was the cheapest place in the UK to actually buy a home. So the average price there was around about £87,000, 87,487. And that's compared to an average of way over £500,000 in London, 569,405,000. There's lots of thousands in there, wasn't there? I lost
You
my
can round
numbers.
up, Martyn. It's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it.
£500,000. When you go just up the road to County Durham, it's just over £200,000. So it's actually much, much more affordable. It's connected. It's a beautiful area. You're not too far from the sea.
I'm really surprised. It's only, like you said, about 30 miles from Newcastle. So if you have a job in a big city, you can kind of go out. I will just caveat the Shildon thing by saying actually the types of homes they have in Shildon are largely terrace. Oh yeah, I didn't just throw this together. I've done a little bit of research. I was actually tempted to go visit Shildon, but I drew the line
we
there.
very nearly bought during the course of this programme. That was the other thing.
Look, for 83,000, did we say?
We reined ourselves in.
That sort of figure, that is twice the ratio. We're talking about the house price ratio. That's 2 times.
Yeah.
So when I said London was 13 times. Now, it's not just London. Like you said, it's other cities as well. But when I moved to Yorkshire, just think how much I saved myself in 1 year. Ignoring all the other expenditures, and we'll get into those in a bit, but over £10,000 just in rent. And I was in this beautiful little 3-bedroom cottage just off the main high street of Skipton. It's lovely, lots of tourists, lots of scones. It was amazing. So when we ask you, is it cheaper? Well, how do you make up £10,000? Katie, is it cheaper as the person who's still in the rural areas?
Well, I was going to say it was a particular time, wasn't it? The pandemic. So we were all in this sort of fantasy of working from home forever, and that seemed like fine. Whereas now, I think if we all moved to Shildon, we might struggle to find work and stuff. And then suddenly the property doesn't seem quite so affordable because we're not sort of earning London money. So I feel like after the pandemic, some companies, there was quite a shift quite quickly to like come back to the office. So of course there's that, isn't there, that it didn't turn out. But like, so for me, so I started, I'm looking at properties, I'm thinking, oh my God, for this, I was in a sort of glorified studio, like it was a nice Georgian flat that basically it was sort of open plan, 1-bedroom sort of studio. My friend used to say you live in a kitchen, actually, because it was like the kitchen was in the middle of it and then the whole thing was open plan. So I went from that to thinking, oh my God, I can get this sort of 5-bedroom farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. So I said I lost my job and I was sitting there in this sort of big studio thinking, oh my God, how am I going to pay the mortgage? There was no potential. Whereas suddenly the thought, I can have a house with rooms, which I might be able to rent. Or maybe, I sort of had that fantasy. We've all been the Londoner that goes to the Airbnb for the weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
And you think, oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll have a little converted barn that I sort of give people nice breakfast. So it
Here's a
seems
basket of
potential.
muffins.
Yeah, exactly. With me, with the bow in my hair and a sort of apron on. I'd forgotten I couldn't bake at that point. I was like, I'll run a sort of, it's all these sort of fantasies. I'll have a tea shop. I'll run a bookshop in the middle of Devon, So I was sort of throwing fantasies around. So that's what I thought I'd do with a farmhouse, I guess, like something like that. And then, of course, so then you get there and you've got the big house and that's great. And it just turns out that the mortgage is like absolutely the least of the costs you're going to have. And you've just been, I hadn't realised what a fantasy world, even though everyone had been telling me.
Did you buy? You just went
I bought.
straight out and bought? Wow.
I went straight out and
Right.
like madness.
Yes.
So what were some of the costs, right? So obviously the house repairs.
So needless to say, I had not a clue what I was doing. So I didn't really know how to even look at an old house or a country house and look for the problems. The conveyancing went on forever. Oh my God, the problems that come up about the neighbour has the right to take his cows through your garden and you don't really own this wall of your, house. And or like some sort of things like you're not allowed to run a tea shop here or you mustn't sell pork. And so It took a long time for the solicitor. I felt like I paid over the odds as it went on for months, during which I had to rent at sort of, money I hadn't expected to spend. So those were expenses I hadn't sort of counted on. The house the problems never ended. It's been 2 years, the problems haven't ended.
You still there?
I'm still hanging on in.
Okay.
And problems I didn't know how to deal with. The septic tank breaks.
The what?
Exactly.
I know, it's
quite.
Septic tank.
I mean, that sounds horrendous,
Yes.
but why do you have a septic tank?
Because I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Not connected to lovely pipes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, no. What is it?
What is it?
Think of it as not being connected to the wider network. So the silage that may come through your property has to go somewhere, often into a pit or
silage.
receptacle of some sort. So that has to kind of be maintained, collected from, and things along those lines.
Yeah.
And everyone has one, or is it like as a town?
If you're off grid and you're not, so I'm not connected to the sewage. I'm not connected to gas for heating. So yeah,
when you said you weren't good at checking houses, like
no,
number one for me.
rural.
Yeah. Do you have? Okay, so that's an issue. Clearly.
Right, so there were problems with that. I had problems with the heating. Trying to deal with damp issues in the house that I hadn't. So loads of things came up that were expensive. And then just being in the country is so much more expensive than you realise. Like the cost of, petrol. Like you think you're going to walk everywhere, but actually you're in the car constantly because you can't sort of get anywhere. So I must spend easily over 100 a week.
Wow.
A week?
I mean,
Wow.
just easily to just sort of go to the shops, even taking the dog for a walk. You're wanting to drive to the place you're going to walk. Farm shops, they're like crack,
I know.
It's costing me an absolute fortune in like clotted cream. It's so, they're addictive and they're so
true.
expensive. But, the cost of heating a house actually is phenomenal. And I suppose in my flat in London, I think I barely turned the heating on because everyone around me had theirs on all the time. So the costs
The
did
warming
start
effect.
sort of mounting up that I was totally naive about.
So are you using oil then for the heating?
Well, I was using oil, but now my whole house runs on wood, which is much more economic. So I have a back boiler and a big wood burning stove, and that heats all the radiators and the hot water in the house.
Does that mean chopping of things though?
You're looking frightened. It's like so
Yeah.
rural for you.
I'm hearing manual labour. That's what I'm hearing.
I was going to say there is an element of that, but I'm also thinking the climate issue. Aren't they trying to get rid of wood burning stoves and those sorts of things?
They are, but I'm in the middle of nowhere, so it's about particles sort of in the air. But we're really
right.
rural. It's not like there's neighbours.
How many neighbours do you have? Like,
How many what?
Oh, right. So if you walk to the nearest town, I mean, when I say I'm rural, I mean, I grew up, I grew up in Norway, to be fair, so we had to walk over a few mountains to get to see anyone. But, I've grown up in a sort of quite rural, villagey town, but it's still a town. I live now outside of London, but still, again, within commuting distance. So Skipton, it's not really stuck in the middle of the Dales, is it? It's the Gateway and it's got a Greggs. So, explain to me, how close?
I'm not, so I think I'm not, because I grew up very, very rural, where it was like 40 minutes to drive to a
This explains a lot, though.
town.
So this is not completely out of the realms of possibility thinking for you.
No, not really. Well, sort of, no, because I hadn't done it as an adult, of course. I'd seen my parents do it and had no idea the work that was going on behind the scenes. But so people come over and they say, God, you're in the middle of nowhere. But I don't think I am. I mean, half an hour I can get to Bath. 40 minutes I can get to Bristol. So,
okay.
Is that
those
in the car,
feels...
though? Is that?
Oh, God,
Or is it running?
Right. Because I'm thinking public transport as well.
Yeah.
Because, so this is the thing that worries me. It's the last train home. So if you popped out for Let's Go Mad, a night out in Bath, flat vowels, sorry, Northern, then how do you get
there
back?
is no public
I was
transport.
going to say, there's not
Right.
a train that goes back, surely.
Well, there's barely, but we were trying to get the bus the other day, actually, and we were looking at it on a sort of Saturday going, but I can't see one until Monday. And it was like, oh, no, that is the next bus. So that's the public transport
An Uber,
situation.
I suppose.
An Uber? I think we once saw an Uber sort of accidentally end up near us after it had dropped someone else.
From London,
Yeah.
probably.
But, we sort of joke about starting an Uber. Because there wouldn't be one anywhere near us.
I have visions of you kind of leaning on a fence with a neighbour going, do you remember that time the Uber drove through?
Yeah.
November it was.
It is actually. So we joke because if a car comes down our lane, we all run to the window. It's like, oh my God, what's happening out there?
We jest, right? But I have to say, okay, there was no Uber when I was in Yorkshire, or I've actually lived all around the country, Worcestershire, all sorts of places in the rural areas. But I loved it. And I get the impression that you're still there. You kind of like it too.
I adore it. And because there are things, obviously, I hate to tell you, beside money, it's not, probably day to day. I don't know. Maybe it evens out. There's loads of things I don't spend money on that I spent a fortune on in London. Uber Eats every day, it was all out the window. Yeah. It's much cheaper to go and eat out and stuff. I don't, I used to love buying like a lot of designer clothes and I was very into that sort of thing in London. Now I don't do any of that.
Why not?
I suppose...
Just because there's nowhere to go, or because there's no pressure, or, the people around you. Do you know what I mean?
So I had loads of lovely Vivienne Westwood dresses when I moved to the country and ended up selling them all because I thought no one's ever going to see them. I'm never going to wear them. And actually, I felt like I was in this place in my life where there was just other stuff I cared about more. It was quite exciting to sort of flog a dress and buy loads of beautiful plants for the garden, or I'm just in my sort of Earth Mother phase.
Not to get all yogi, but there was especially the long walks. I did so many walks around, and it's that in touch with nature, Martyn. No, but I did feel like it was, and if we're talking about things that are cheaper, would I go out, go to the theatre, go to sporting, whatever, or go for a really long walk and a country pint? That was a heck of a lot cheaper. Pints are a lot cheaper, that's for sure.
The sort of piece of it I love. When I was living literally on the main road in Dalston, and I felt like I literally couldn't hear myself think, and I was trying to write and I couldn't form a sentence in my head. Whereas now it's just so peaceful. I just am quite happy sort of tapping away all day, loads of lovely walks. I did do all the cliche stuff and got the lovely Labrador. So, him and me just sort of trotting around. I adore being in the garden. And I just, look,
you got the dog as well. You really did it all, didn't you?
I did the whole,
How's the dog?
The dog's adorable. I was going to bring him, but he's a total pain. But because he's used to
adorable,
just free
but he's
roaming. But yeah, in the evening, I'll just stand outside and look at the stars and just be happy.
See, that's
wow.
Look, I was going to ask you as well, because do you become more kind of seasonal in terms of the fact that obviously when the sun goes down, you're basically at home, but do you mind? Do you go to bed earlier? Does it change the way that you live your life?
Oh, yeah. I sort of realised quickly that I would have to make my own fun. And that is what people are doing. And I think it takes quite a long time for being in the country before that starts to happen, where you start, so I have a lot of dinner parties, loads of people over, we have a lot of parties, the bedrooms, I moved people in. So I was able to sort of save money actually, because I've got lodgers in a way. I did start the Airbnb. So I guess I've got loads of stuff actually keeping me incredibly busy. I feel like weirdly there's no time, even though the idea was a more peaceful life. Yeah.
Have you moved to the country, or have you gone from the country to the city? What was it like? Let us know. Leave a comment below. I have to ask, because when we talk about moving anywhere, But particularly to a rural area of the country, it's on the assumption that we will be able to obviously still work, so still maintain that kind of level of lifestyle. Have you found that when you moved that there was any sort of loss of job opportunities or, certainly networking as a journalist?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? So I live with a photographer who's younger than me, so in a different point in his career. And I definitely think, I was in London 15 years. So I spent a lot of time building up connections. I felt like I was quite jammy. I wasn't in the office anyway. I had never hardly been in the office in my whole career. So even before the pandemic and everything, I wasn't really in a position where people were expecting that of me. So I don't think it made a huge difference to me. Whereas my flatmate, who's a lot younger, is trying to start his career, I think he does really miss that networking. I don't know if it was in Yorkshire, if you found there was no one sort of around.
So, yes and no. For me, I was it was the middle of the pandemic. So it was like everything that we'd done moved online, even TV, which was, really unheard of. We'd be going into studios at ridiculous time in the morning. It was quite liberating, actually. I could be anywhere. And I think it's actually quite nice to have journalists now that we're not all living in London giving their views of what it's like to live elsewhere.
Yeah, right, big time.
So for me, it actually didn't make a difference. So all of a sudden, and I was jesting about, I felt rich, but I did. I was going from 1,600 to 750 in rent, still doing my same job. And actually, I'm the sort of person that is quite easy making friends. So I didn't feel particularly lonely any more probably than anybody else in the middle of the pandemic when you're all walking around with masks and sometimes you can go out, sometimes you can't. But thank goodness I had that, the most beautiful country on my doorstep that I could go out when everybody else. When I think about the flat that I was in back in London, I shudder. And I shudder to think what some people were like, living 3 kids in a top floor flat. It must have been absolutely awful. So the idea of moving away was just, it was great and I loved it. But I did feel coming to the end of it and when we were sort of coming out of lockdown, a pull to go home. And I think a lot of that was because my family are all down south. And so I wanted to be around them as they get older. But there is still a big pull, a country heart of mine, probably the Norwegian girl in me, that thinks I would actually love to do it. Would I have the bravery right now in my career without the kind of networking opportunities and this live studio stuff? I don't know. But just listening to you, apart from the septic tank, really, honestly, though, it tugs at my heartstrings. And I do,
I think it's important what you said as well about journalists being out of London. I think it gave me a new niche where I find, my thing's always been finding stories and, obviously writing sort of features about them. So I guess I see things going on. I'm not in competition with other people now. I feel like I'm seeing a whole different lot of things going on. And it's really interesting. Maybe the pandemic made people a bit more aware, for journalists that we should be covering stories more nationally. I don't know, I quite like that about it.
No, I think so too. Talking of the work that you were doing, though, I want to touch on dating.
Yes, this was quite high on my list as well.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it was a major concern.
No, but I did start Googling, is dating in the rural areas difficult? And yours was the first article that came up. I was like, oh, look at that. And you painted a very vivid picture of life in London to life in the country. How did that work out?
Okay, so pros and cons. Are you single? Is that what you're wondering?
I am single. I'm just putting it out there. If you would like to get in touch with me, just follow the details on the just below here. Just type it in. Yes, I am, and I've not had much look in a city, so going to the country terrifies me.
Oh, I don't know. It might be better.
I think city does have its own issues, doesn't it? Just reading what you were saying. Do you not find? I remember I couldn't make a date once. It was I gave them a few hours. I wasn't feeling very well, and their response was, "I could have arranged another date." That to me summed up London. Everybody's in or a city. So I've dated in Manchester. I've dated in Birmingham. It's that kind of attitude that, I'm busy. Actually, really great people and could easily have a partner if they just committed the time to it. I have a sense of feeling that that's probably not the case in the country. But I think the flip side of that is small town, everybody knows your business.
Oh my God, totally that. I was a bit sort of conscious, actually. You went to Yorkshire. I really thought about Yorkshire.
Gorgeous.
It felt quite family to me. And I was a bit feeling like as a woman on my own, I wanted to be in a particular place. I ended up in Somerset where I felt there were sort of more I don't know, single people or London people had moved there, or like more younger people, or do you know what I mean? Whereas there's areas that feel very family, and I did feel a bit sort of isolated. But how was the country? Well, so when I was at Land's End, we used to have this joke. My friend would joke she'd completed Tinder, because you could you could literally be like, oh, I've run out of people, which I didn't even know could happen in London, right?
Yeah.
Like you say, it's like a never-ending sort of cycle of, and I think I had got so sick of that feeling that people are so disposable, aren't they, in London? Like you might have an amazing date and they've disappeared, or you might have been seeing someone 3 months and they've disappeared.
That's such a good point, because I mean, do you think that sometimes with such a a broad and wide range of choice, it makes us so super picky? That we are actually missing people who are perfect for us.
You swipe again,
we're waiting for the person around the corner.
I do think so, and I think it does feel like there's like, there might be someone else out there. You can't resist, can you? Sort of the next day or the next. And there's a sort of culture, isn't there, in London with work and everything we're doing and clothes, and you're always trying to get the best or get the new thing. So I definitely think that transfers to dating. And I did feel in the countryside that people, a bit more were willing to give it a go, because you might be the only person within a 5-mile radius. So like, let's have a sort of crack at this. There is a bit of sort of going on there and thinking, right, that's the neighbour over there. That's the married farmer. That's like, so you're like, I think I changed my radius because I thought I don't want to only date my neighbours and have to see these people forever. Whereas in London, you could go on the date and never see them again.
Yeah, you can have a terrible date in a city. Mind you, I bump into everyone on the bus, so it doesn't make any difference. I think one of the things I found very funny when chatting to my friends who moved to the countryside was every now and then they get very, very excited because they think that somebody new had moved to town, somebody hot and gorgeous. Anyway, it turns out they were on a train that was passing through with the apps open. So go figure. So hopes were raised and dashed.
I mean, I did write a sort of piece about the difference of the country dating. I got really into it at first, where deliberately, I had been going out with a lot of sort of startup CEOs and sort of tech boys. In London.
I know, but went out with the judge, on the way to court.
This article is on the Times website, by the way, just in case you want to read it yourself.
And then so I really was like, when I went to Cornwall, I thought, right, it's going to be all farmers and fishermen now. This will be... Just because I thought it would be sort of fun. And it was different to date people who are like very different to you. But now I moved from Land's End to Somerset, which is much more, I think there's more around me. The radius I've got is like very vast. So, I'm maybe chatting to people in South Wales and Gloucestershire. I think once you've lived in London, the thought of travelling an hour to meet someone actually feels like nothing, does it? And I've been dating someone in Ireland, actually. So, I mean, that, and he lives in very rural Ireland. I don't know, it just has sort of worked. So I guess it doesn't really matter where you are. Maybe
he out-ruraled you. You found someone that out-ruraled you,
he's
basically.
So much more rural than me. Yeah.
As far away there.
On the sort of wild west coast of Ireland, yeah.
And I understand you met him naturally, as it were.
Naturally, yeah.
I mean, that still happens.
Naturally, I love that.
Well, digitally, Martyn, that's
witchcraft,
sort of...
things along those lines.
Exactly. But I mean, we talk about the loneliness, and I was jesting about, a 5-bedroom house in the middle of nowhere sort of thing. Actually sounds very idyllic right now. But I found when I lived in London, and particularly dating, I think, does sort of have this feel to it. But if you have moved to London from outside, and I hear this a lot, especially with my friends who've come from abroad, it's actually really hard to crack, to kind of, it feels even lonelier. Martyn, you went from, you went to 2 big cities from sort of a towny area, as it were. You were in Manchester, and then you went to London. Did you find that? I mean, you were a very gregarious, happy chappy. I mean...
Well, I think I like being around people. So living in a city really works for me, but I am actually a loner. So for me, I apologise in advance to everybody, but for me, the pandemic was actually quite a good time because I worked right the way through it, but I enjoyed being at home by myself. But then what scares me a little bit about moving to the country, and I'd love to hear your view on this, is I enjoyed it a little bit too much, and I felt that I was becoming a hermit. And it's actually taken quite a bit of work to get out and start going and meeting people again, or making excuses for not going out. And I worry that if I move to Somerset, I would revert to my natural instincts of living in a cave and
just being a hermit in your
basically,
cottage.
I'm picturing a beard. I'm picturing faintly smelling, probably quite a bit.
Yeah, bunny slippers.
So being forced to sort of leave the house in the city and see other people is like the only reason you're interacting with other people, is
possibly,
that?
Yes. And given the freedom, I mean, how did you find kind of dealing with that sense of isolation, but also kind of going out and interacting with people?
Well, I think initially it was a bit like that, but then it was the pandemic. And now I'm like, I mean, you know, there's a sort of joke that if you were to drive past someone in the car and not wave, you would never, that could last generations, that sort of feud.
Oh, yes.
Like, so like everyone, you know, knows who you are, says hello. You know, Colin in the post office will be saying, you know, also, what's this you're posting? Oh, God, a driving ticket, you know. So everyone knows your business. It's actually very hard to be anonymous in the country in the way it is in the city. Even though I was craving being on my own, I'm a bit like you. The house has turned into like a mini commune. I mean, I can't seem to keep people away from me. Like, I've got flatmates who moved in. I started using this thing called Help X. I don't know if you know it, where people stay with you, like sort of Airbnb, but they do work on the property.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's great. So obviously me with my nightmare house, so I've got different people coming all the time who are doing work around the place. I've got the Airbnb.
Is a commune, then. It's really
I know, so I can't
feel.
get 5 minutes to myself, actually, is the result of being in the country, even though I went there because I was craving being alone. Yeah.
Signs, train your dogs. And when I went on Duke of Edinburgh, there was a lady with a shotgun. And bunny slippers and an Alsatian. That worked, by the way, if you want to keep off her land. How are the cows, by the way? Do they actually come through your land and it's your garden?
Oh yeah. You wake up and find this sort of cow pats.
Marvellous.
And think, okay. They've been
Daisy
in
again.
I feel a bit guilty about it because I'm there sort of eating a steak, looking out the window, thinking how sweet they look.
Oh, what
Sweet and yet
the
tasty,
cows.
though, let's face it.
Oh, Martin, I do want to touch on, we mentioned about mental well-being and all that sort of thing, because the health and well-being aspect, I was looking at some of the figures that said a child born in a rural area is expected to live between about 1 or 2 years longer. I mean, it doesn't sound a lot, but, you know, it's significant that you're going to live longer because you live potentially in rural areas. Do you feel healthier?
Actually, I didn't notice it. And then suddenly one day I really, you know, I had been living, it was a particular time, wasn't it? Not just the pandemic, but like there had been some terrorist attacks in London. There was like quite a lot of stabbings happening around me in Dalston. I would walk my dog at night and I would feel quite nervous in a way I didn't really realise I was nervous. I mean, I don't even lock the door now. I don't even lock the car if I go to the shops. Like, there's something that my nervous system has just completely relaxed because there's never any threats of any kind other than a cow in the garden. I'm gardening all day and I realise I've got like a lot of anxiety and just sort of being with the earth. I'm going to totally earth mother you now, but like, you know, digging all day and just sort of having my hands in the earth and feeling my feet on the earth. Just feel very calm. And I think that probably makes quite a big difference that I've not got that anxiety.
Now, not to rain on your praise, because this sounds idyllic, but, you know, if I'm stuck in a city, I'm going to ruin this for Katie. No, I'm not. I just think one of the other things that scares me a little bit about living in the country is about health. And it's about what happens if something goes wrong, or about if you need an ambulance, or, you know, I'm approaching the age where I might have a fall. So what happens under those circumstances? Do you worry a little bit about if you could get to a hospital, or if you needed to, or, God forbid, you've got years yet, but getting older?
Well, so it's interesting. When I was in Cornwall, I think I did more. I think there's one hospital that serves all of Cornwall. And if you're right at the end, it is a bit of a schlep. So, I mean, bearing in mind, even though I feel rural, I'm not really that remote. And then it's interesting, isn't it? Because I've been obviously reading in the paper about like queues for GPs. I have to say my GP is incredible. Like, I feel like I get seen really, really quickly. I feel like it's a much more sort of personal. She knows me, you know. So it does feel quite different, actually, in that respect, to sort of London.
I mean, I don't know about you, Georgie, but I don't have my own GP. I have a collection of 10 of them that I get randomly if I can get an appointment within 3 weeks. So actually, that does sound...
3 weeks. I went on the other day, 6 weeks.
Wow.
It got so bad, and talking about the age we're at, I actually booked a GP appointment, had to wait the 6 weeks. When it came round to 6 weeks, I'd forgotten why I'd booked it. Yeah. So I had to do you know what? Which probably should have been a reason why I went. But look, we've talked about why us moving, but what about the concept of loads of people moving to one particular area? We've had this particularly with Cornwall, where it's pushing up prices and you can't live in that area. You know, where I grew up, lovely town, like close to London, but still near the hills and all that sort of thing. The average property price last year was £900,000. I can't go back to the place that I grew up to buy. What made me think of doing this, like, as an episode, was I was on TV and I was trying to say, it was after I think the chairman of NatWest said that, you know, it's easy for young people to get on the property ladder. And I said, look, no, it's not. It's quite tough. To which someone messaged me and said, why don't you just go to East Lancashire? So naturally I looked up. Cheapest place to live in East Lancashire is Accrington. House prices coming in at £130,000. Okay, quite substantially cheaper than £900,000. Yes, I could just move the other side of the country, leave all my ageing parents and family and that sort of thing behind. But I thought, what would that mean if we all just did up sticks and go to Accrington? Anybody else thinking of the milk advert when we were younger? Right, yes.
Family.
Who are they? Exactly. Anyway, if we all just did, what would that do to house prices there? What would it do? Because, of course, it's supply and demand. If everybody's demanding a house in Accrington, prices are going to go up. It's not quite as simple as just saying, just move. And we do hear that a lot, especially to young people saying, oh, don't just complain, move around the country for work, move around the country for a cheaper place.
Well, I think this is one of the things that worries me a little bit because, as I mentioned before, when you move to a different part of the UK, if you're moving somewhere that's a little bit cheaper, it can become disproportionate because for many people, they'll buy to let because it's the only way that they can live in London or in Manchester or in Leeds and pay the rent and yet still be able to buy a property, which basically means we're creating an ongoing number of landlords all around the country who are driving people out more and more from the places where they want to live. And then, of course, we've not even got anywhere near the holiday home debacle as well, which I'm sure is a subject du jour where you are.
Well, it's tricky, isn't it? So when I first moved to the countryside and I was writing about it, I did get a lot of, on a personal level, people were quite annoyed about some Londoner coming in and sort of like, as a journalist, people in the comments were getting quite annoyed about it. But I think there's a sort of fallacy that goes on that there's Londoners and then there's other people because everyone I know in London actually did move here from somewhere else.
Very true.
So I think that, and probably a lot of people did what I did, which was go out one place, go to London and make their career, and then decide to move back really to the sort of areas they came from. So I don't know if the idea is we're all supposed to literally, be where we grew up and never sort of move. Yeah, so I think that's a bit of a sort of fallacy. I mean, they're definitely, I guess I am not anti-second homeowners, but it definitely does something to a community when people are buying houses, especially when they can buy them at inflated prices and they're not planning on living there. Whereas actually I think Londoners or people who lived in London for a bit, moving to areas of the countryside, I think it's really enlivened a lot of places that, some rural places have really suffered. A lot of the villages near me, there's no shop in them or the pub's closed. And actually to be able to, the public transport has had to improve because there's people living there now who want to do stuff. It's kept the pubs alive. So I think it's quite exciting that people are moving around the country. Yeah, let's move to East Lancashire. I'm up for it.
Accrington, yeah, exactly. Okay, so to wrap up then, what did you learn? If you were to do it again, if you were to have a little bit more planning and thought, okay, yep, this is what I'm going to do, maybe even start a new business, what would you have done differently?
What would I learned everything on the go. The big thing that everyone told me that I completely ignored was rent first, which you did. I should have rented first and got to know an area. Maybe I wouldn't have done it then though. But so I guess rent
come
first.
back like me.
I tell you the biggest thing actually, which is a sort of premise of this thing. But I left the city saying I'm going to move to the country with no idea that the entire country is so different. Dorset versus the Peak District versus rural Scotland. It's not like the country is one place, obviously. So I think I really would have got to know areas better. I would have lived in them more and, just taken my time over it.
Would you move abroad?
100%. I am thinking of moving abroad now.
Wow, Martyn, would you?
Well, I certainly would do. And I think, I'm priced out of the London market.
Abroad or country?
Abroad,
oh, right,
definitely.
Yeah.
And because so here's an interesting thing. My lovely, lovely best friend recently went with her husband and works in Ghana.
Wow.
For 2 years. She worked for 2 months in Ghana just over Christmas. And she works for one of the biggest councils in the UK and managed to do everything from there. And I realised that with a suitable broadband Wi-Fi connection, it's possible to do this if you can zip backwards and forwards. And that's really opened my eyes. So I don't know, maybe the future is abroad.
I don't want to end on a negative, but I do have to say, Wi-Fi and broadband.
Oh, that's true. That's so true. This is my big fear.
In the sticks. I mean, if you're talking about working from home, But then saying that, there's places in London where you can
That's
black spots.
phenomenal. I was going to say, in London, I felt like you're fighting with everyone else for signal, or it was.
Then it is a positive note to end on.
Excellent Wi-Fi.
Katie, that is why we have you on the show, for that level of positivity. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course to you, Martyn, and of course to you for being here. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes of Bread and Honey. And if you have any comments or questions for us, or anything you'd like us to delve into on a future show, just drop us an email or jot them down in the section below. Until next time. Just a reminder that anything you hear in the show is not financial advice. We are not qualified financial advisors. Remember too that investing carries risk. The value of your assets may go up as well as down, and you could lose all your money. It's best to speak to an independent financial advisor. We've plenty more on this on the Times Money Mentor website.